All right, so a typical foggy morning here, Stowe Lake in Golden Gate Park, and I am here with Tad Wagner, and we're just kind of coming up with our compositions. I'm actually going to paint a scene that I've done multiple times before, although it's been a while. All right, so I'm going to paint these cypress trees here with the reflections in the water, and then off in the distance there are some eucalyptus trees, and so I'll use atmospheric perspective to push those back, but primarily what I'm going to be focusing on is the cypress here and the reflections. I'm going to be working on a 14 by 18 in a vertical position, and then my usual palette of colors. Been doing a lot with this number 10 natural bristle flat, so I'll probably be working mostly with this brush today. So I decided to tone with burnt sienna today. It's a very light toning, and so I just thin the burnt sienna with odorless mineral spirits, brush it on, and then wipe it off with a paper towel. I want to have a little bit of orange in this painting. Basically, there's mostly greens out here, so I think it'd be nice to have some of the orange tones popping through. Tad's got his sketch.
It's kind of have this little abstract
cool.
thing going on, just kind of leading the eye back in the distance there.
Oh, okay, so you're focusing on how it the water goes around the corner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that feature too. Yeah. Look at all those juicy colors. Just can't get enough of that.
I actually dried those out a little bit on a piece of cardboard.
Oh, did you really?
Squeeze them out, and then overnight just let all the extra oil like kind of seep out.
Oh,
so
I heard the Impressionists did that too, to kind of make the paint stiffer.
Make it stiffer, and it doesn't slosh around when I'm carrying it.
Oh, right.
And yeah, and I just kind of like the texture of it.
Yeah, it thickens it up a bit, right? Yeah, very cool. And you're working on a 12 by 16?
That's right.
All right, nice. Just basically laying out the big shapes, the cypress trees, the eucalyptus trees in the background, and then the shoreline, and then the reflection. I'm mixing up a dark color here using alizarin crimson, ultramarine, and I'm also mixing in some of this burnt sienna, which will, it's like kind of a purplish color, but it's more grayed down than my typical dark mixture. And I'm using liquid, of course, and odorless mineral spirits, just a bit. So you can see that that's pretty grayed down, but it's definitely still leaning towards purple. I'm kind of feeling like I want to push the water line down a little bit, but I want to maintain some of the reflection. So yeah, it may come down a little bit, but not much. So I'm mixing up a color for the sky using titanium white, ultramarine, and I'm mixing in a little bit of this gray mixture here to kind of dull down the ultramarine, because the sky is definitely a sort of gray color. Through the monitor here, it looks yellow, but in real life, it's just sort of a warm gray. Okay, so next I want to mix a color for these trees in the distance here, the eucalyptus trees. I'm going to make them lighter than I'm seeing them to push them back, so I'm using titanium white, ultramarine, and a little bit of yellow ochre. So my palette is a mid-tone gray, so you can see this is a little lighter than mid-tone. I want these trees to be darker than the sky, but Obviously a lot lighter than the tree in the foreground. All right, so next I'm gonna paint in the reflections, and so definitely kind of a warm green in this area, and then as it gets closer to the shoreline, it gets darker in value. Starting with a mixture of titanium white, ultramarine, cad yellow medium, and a touch of yellow ochre. Right, a little more yellow in there for the area closer to the bottom. Yeah, it's got like kind of a cool tonalist vibe already.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of this you know, shape right here. Nice purple over there.
Might be a little thick or something. I gotta.
Are you gonna come over that with like some of those green tones?
Oh, that, yeah. I should do that. Yep.
That might help too.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's very cool so far.
Cool.
Liking
Thanks.
it. Okay, so I've got everything more or less mapped out here, and now I'm going to start refining colors, but also I need to go back into the trees here and, you know, put some darker darks, because this is pretty light in value and pretty transparent. So next step is to look for the darkest darks and kind of reinforce those. So you're adding these greens, right?
Yeah.
But you know how you have like very simplified shapes?
Yeah.
I'm almost thinking, and I'm thinking this for myself as well, like looking up within there and finding almost like a shape like this. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to like
all the dashes.
Yeah, as opposed to the dashes. Although you may be just like, you know, starting with that and then we're gonna go with a simple shape. But I'm thinking if there's a way to break down that the tree into like dark and light,
Right.
you know, like the way you've done over here, like
I'm gonna do that.
that could make for a stronger, you know, and more cohesive sort of presentation.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to mix up a color for the green portion of these cypress trees here. There's always a lot more red in the greens than you'd think. Here is the green I've mixed up, and this is ultramarine, titanium white, cadmium yellow medium, and burnt sienna to kind of add a reddish sort of tone to it. So you're thinking you pushed it a little too far, you said?
Yeah, I got a little too many squigglies down there.
You almost don't need ripples. Like you see right along the edge how it almost seems like there's maybe little areas of like slight zigzag, but it's still keeping with the overall shape.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to like be backseat driving your painting here.
No, I appreciate that. I just anything to kind of help bring it to a good conclusion. You know?
Right.
Yeah, no, I think I can fix this.
Oh yeah, for sure,
So,
for sure.
Cool, thank you.
So now I'm painting in some of the sky holes. Usually I make the paint for the sky holes a little bit darker than the value of the sky because of refraction. I think that really works. A lot of times too, just having a soft edge along the reflection, you know, really creates, you know, it gives that feel of, you know, the fact that it's reflected water.
Yeah.
I think it really works.
Cool, thanks. Thanks for the tips, pro tips, man.
No problem. Trying something different with the water here. Normally what I would do is have a lot of vertical strokes and then broken up with a few horizontal ripples or whatever, kind of like this right here. But it just, I don't know, I kind of like the idea of having thick paint going in both directions, so I'm sort of experimenting with that, and I think I like that better. I'm adding the lighter portions, which is just titanium white with ultramarine, loading the brush up and then putting thicker bits of paint over the thin areas. Okay, so here's a look at the finished product. And as I mentioned, this is a composition I've done before, but of course they all come out slightly different. And I've never done one this size either, mostly 11 by 14 and 12 by 16. So this is a larger size for me. One thing I'll point out is there's a bit of glare right here. So this is kind of lighter and bluer on camera than it is in real life. So as I mentioned, I was experimenting with different paint application in this version, and primarily just trying to put, you know, thick and thin, vertical and horizontal strokes in the reflections, instead of just like all vertical reflected reflections and then with some horizontal, you know, reflected sky to break it up. This is a technique that I've seen Monet use, and an early California painter by the name of George Kennedy Brandreth, seen him do that as well, and thought it'd be fun to experiment with that technique. And I actually really like it. I think it looks good, it works. The other way works too, but this way allows me to get just a little bit more surface texture, and we'll take a closer look in a second so you can kind of see that stuff up close. As I mentioned, I did use atmospheric perspective to push these trees back. I wanted to get good separation. In real life, you know, these branches here are sort of blended in with the eucalyptus trees in the background, and I wanted those to be, I wanted there to be a clear separation so that this shape here of the tree, or these trees, really stood out. One of the key things I think in painting cypress or any trees is the sky holes. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I was sketching this thing in, I was leaving little unpainted areas, and then I can kind of pick and choose which sky holes I want to keep and which ones I want to cover up, and then I come back in with the, you know, with the sky color and fill those in. That's one of the key things to making trees look convincing, is having you know, a certain amount of openness so you can see the sky through them. Oftentimes when we first start painting trees, they're just like a big solid block. So let's take a closer look at the paint application. So you can see this area of green is pretty thin and scrubby, but then the lighter areas, you know, there's thicker paint, and so there's thick and thin going on and different directions. I'm gonna get a lot of glare on this tree, but you can kind of see the same thing here. There's areas, you know, of transparency and where it's thin, and areas where it's thick. A little bit of that going on in the sky too. You can see some of the orange coming through, especially little areas like, you know, around the edges of the foliage. So Stow Lake is probably one of my favorite places to paint on a foggy day. And we have a lot of foggy days in the summertime here in the Bay Area, so I'm sure we'll get out there again. I'm glad Tad was able to come out and join me. I will link to his Instagram in the description below. Also, if you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below as well. I've got a bunch of extra videos on there, a supply list, that sort of thing. So check it out. Other than that, stay creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video.